Good afternoon, everyone. It's great to have you with us. It's episode 106 of PMI Live. It's 1500 in the UK and it's the final Friday of the month. So we have a panel discussion for you this week. I'm joined by our guests, Des and Richard, who I will ask to introduce themselves very shortly. For those of you regular with PMI Live, you know you get the best benefit out of, or the most benefit out of these things when you participate. So help keep these guys on their toes at the end of the month. At the end of the month, it is the end of the month, and the end of the day on Friday as well. Let's see what we can do. Des, I'm going to have to interrupt you there. We've still got a hell of a lot of sound from you.
All right, I'm going to have to just switch that off. That's going to be interesting.
Okay, we look forward to you delivering a discussion panel through the power of mime. How is your mime, Des?
Not great, and it won't.
Okay, cool. Don't worry. This afternoon, if you are joining us on one of the live streams on Facebook, on LinkedIn, or the other one, which is, of course, YouTube, you are very welcome, and it's great to have you with us. If you would like to participate in the live session, hop on over to pmi.co.uk, where you can still register and join the live session. We look forward to seeing you there. I'll be facilitating the session, which involves putting us through curating the discussion today. We've got 5 key topics, which I'll introduce you to very shortly. And in each of those topics, I will put them into the chat. As those come up, we'd love to hear your feedback, your comments, your observations, and if you, of course, you've got questions for these guys. The eagle-eyed of you may have noticed that we were due to be joined today by Sharon McGowan from Rolls-Royce. Unfortunately, Sharon's unwell, so she's been able to join us. Wish you the very best for a speedy recovery, Sharon. So no pressure, guys, but it's all eyes on you two to host this discussion this afternoon. So, Richard, can I ask you to introduce yourself first off?
Absolutely, Rich. Thanks. So afternoon, everyone. I'm Richard Park. I'm head of quality at Portakabin. I've been with Portakabin for about 9 years now. Before that, I was in automotive very briefly, aerospace for quite a long time, and a little bit of time in oil and gas and nuclear. So, yep, that's me.
Okay, fantastic. And Rich, you know, Portakabin's a very famous name, but just recap on exactly what the business does for us.
Yeah, sure, Rich. I mean, Portakabin's synonymous with the grey boxes, and of course, grey boxes are very much what we do. But what you might not know is we do some fantastic hospital wings. We do schools. We do nurseries, we do buildings for the Ministry of Justice, Defence Infrastructure Organisation, and so on and so forth. So we've got a very broad portfolio, and many of our buildings you would never recognise as Portakabins in a million years, because we've got different sort of cladding systems and architectural enhancements. So grey boxes on steroids.
Yeah, yes, indeed. And fair to say, if in terms of sectors, you consider yourselves in the construction sector, but you've got both manufacturing and hire and service operations within there as well. So multi-dimensions. And one of the areas I'm particularly interested in the discussion this afternoon is picking your brain about instilling quality across a diverse and geographically diverse workforce.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Portakabin is in multiple countries, which perhaps not everybody knows, particularly sort of Western Europe. So we've got a presence in Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, France, Germany, and then the United Kingdom and island of Ireland. And we have, as you rightly say, we've got a very large hire business. That's the majority at least by pound notes, and we have a significant sales business as well. So quite a split. A lot of it's project based, but we do have a lot of standard product as well going through manufacturing. We've got 3 manufacturing plants. We've got one in the UK, and we've got one in France and one in Germany.
Okay, fantastic. Cheers, Richard. I appreciate that. So let's test this tech then, Desmond Kelly. What have you got for us? Can we hear you?
Well, I hope you can hear me, but I hope you don't hear all the noise as well.
No, it is perfect.
This is good. The wonders of
I
technology.
know you like to make an entrance, and indeed you have succeeded in doing so. So many of you regular attendees will know Des of old. He's a regular presenter on PMI Live. But Des, I think for anyone that doesn't know you, could you introduce yourself, give a bit of your background specifically in this field, and then give us an update on where you've been since we last saw you, dare I ask?
Well, clearly, as a result of the entrance, I'm the drama queen. So I must admit, I don't like technology doing that to me just after the setup and everything works. But there we go. You can hear me now. So my background is I'm an engineer and researcher by background. So I spent most of my life in the automotive industry. I was the board member for quality for a large automotive organisation, OEM, and for the last 20 years, I've been working within PMI, working across the world in a number of organisations, both not for quality, governmental, power source, everything. We are blessed with some of the world's greatest organisations that we can work with, and that's a real joy. A couple of the recent ones. One is actually Let's Take the Power companies, where we got they provide power to the world, literally, and also I think in one or two big manufacturing type organisations where we've been working with those, and it's been, I think, quality comes really imperative from that perspective.
So one of the things I'm looking to you for today then, Des, is obviously you've got the engineering and manufacturing background that you had historically, but really interested in you to bring the service dimension today absolutely. As well. So quality in action in service is your brief, if you're good with that.
Oh, absolutely perfect. Perfectly happy with that.
Awesome. So we're often asked why we select the topics and how we select the topics for PMI Live. The direct answer to that is it comes from the Voice of the Customer surveys over to you, which we will send out the VOC at the end of the session. And in there is a suggestion box for the next set of topics for PMI Live. We're also interested in formats. If there's particular guests you'd like us to try and track down, if there's topics you'd like us to cover, if there's a different format or an experimentation method that you'd like us to have a go at, do let us know. We're up for a challenge, and we're putting together 2025's schedule, and it's up for grabs. So in your hands, folks. So specifically, why this topic? So beyond the fact that you guys have, our audiences have suggested it and requested it, as many of you will know, it is the end of International Quality Month, and we've been running a campaign, and you'll have seen some of the resources for the whole month, supporting practitioners in the quality field for the whole month of November this year. And this is the culmination of that, and specifically why quality. You know, quality often hard won, very regularly taken for granted, always demanded or / expected in one form or another. Quality is everywhere in our work and in our personal lives, whether we realize it or not. And there's multiple definitions, there's multiple angles. And that's some of the things we want to dive into today. So if I just share with you briefly before we start the discussion, the 4 topics we're going to step through. And they're these. First of all, we're going to start off with a definition of quality. What do we mean by it? And we've got something we'd like to try out on you there, first of all, and get your responses to, and also Richard and Des's as well. And then we're going to explore the profile of quality. What's it looking like today in Des and Richard's experience across the work that they do, before moving into thinking about the benefits of developing a quality culture, and dare we say it, trying to answer that question. What do we mean by a quality culture? How does that manifest itself? And then finally, we'll finish off with looking at some of the challenges, the good, the bad, and the ugly of quality implementation and quality deployment. And really importantly, how can some of those challenges be tackled? So let us try this definition first of all, before I ask Des and Richard to have a look. So let me put this in the chat for you. I'll just get that up for you now. So here, how about this for a definition of quality? What do you make of it? And then I'm going to ask Richard and Des to respond. So in the chat now is a question for you. How about this for a definition of quality? Quality is delivering everything that the customer needs and wants at minimum cost to society. So delivering everything the customer needs and wants at a minimum cost to society. Okay, Des, I can see you smiling. You've caught my eye, first of all, so I'm coming over to you. What do you make of that definition? And talk us through the definition. What do you think is meant by that?
Well, I actually quite like that definition because it's quite minimalistic, but can be quite broad in its context as well. And one of the things I like about it is, first of all, it's customer centric, because the customers actually are the reason for our businesses, our reason for our organizations, whether you're in hospitals, whether you're in government. It is your clients and customers that are the reason that we exist. However, I also like at minimum cost to society, and I think that you can take that at a broad base. You can obviously take the societal perspective, things like the environment or social responsibility, how we look after people. That's definitely really important. But how about the employee perspective as well? So one of the things that I know has become increasingly important to me in my life is something that the Japanese called ikigai, which is the meaning for life, or make something that makes life worthwhile. And I think an organization that does not help employees and the people who work with it make their life worthwhile, give them a reason for being, I think is not really quality. You can also then take the organizational perspective, because if the organization keeps losing customers, it's got to advertise and it's got to keep chasing after them. That's not minimum cost to society. What about suppliers? If you don't collaborate and coordinate and cooperate with your suppliers, are you putting them at duress, and maybe they're having to do things which, they're responding in a way that is wrong? That's not minimum cost to society. And look at the internal, external customers as well, all that sort of thing. So whilst it's very minimalistic, I actually quite like it for its ability to just about encase everything that I would probably perceive quality as. But I'd be really interested, Rich, and from Richard as well, particularly Richard from his perspective as well, is that would we change that? And at the end of the session, could we change it into something that has more meaning to everybody, all the hundreds that are on this call?
Well, there we go. He's challenged you now, Richard. I think he was just asking you to redefine that by the end of the call. So what do you make of this, Rich?
Well, I'm a simple soul, and for me, it's very much about outcomes. So what does the customer want, and then just feeding off what Des has just said, the broader definition of customer, but then beyond customer, for those that know their typical quality management system standards, it's what do the interested parties want? So interested parties vis-a-vis society and suppliers and so on and so forth. So I mean, when I recount the earlier parts of my career, it's very much about conformance to specification. So quality is not making a defect. How do you define a defect? Well, it's something that doesn't conform to specification. So that's kind of was my start point. And then, of course, as you evolve in your career and your understanding, and for that matter, society and organisations evolve in terms of their understanding and their appreciation of what quality means, it becomes about quality control, it becomes quality assurance. And then what Des is talking about there is the broader sort of total quality, holistic, which is sort of everything that your organization's trying to achieve, minimum costs, support society, and so on and so forth. So for me, the definition of quality is very much about what your organization wants to achieve for its customers and interested parties. And yeah, if that's at minimum cost to society, which is very much to be applauded, then great. Some organizations, I think, will recognize that. Informally, some will recognise it formally, and to some degree, as long as you are satisfying your customers and generating value then they will come back, and your business will be generally speaking in a good place, as long as you've got all your costs right and all that good stuff as well. But yeah, so quality very much about customers and interested parties for me.
Okay, so building on that, then we've got a question, and I'll just sculpt this slightly to both of your responses. So, Richard, you've talked about interested parties. Des, you talked about society. Where do you see sustainability in the environment in this, and the role of quality in this minimum cost to society definition that we're talking about? So, sustainability in the environment, Des, what's quality got to offer?
Well, a huge amount, actually, and I'm going to play back to a word that Richard used when he spoke. He talked about holistic approach to quality, and I think that's very much today's essence of quality. If I were to go back to the days when I started, I'll just go back history before I answer your question. I may need to ask what the question was again in a minute, but when I started, the role of quality very much was a policeman inspector. It was to really ensure that we observed the defects before they went out, whether that was in a bank or whether it's in a hospital, whether it's in a manufacturing environment, doesn't matter, right? Observe the defects and correct it before it went out. Now, 40 years down the road, that's very, very, very different. I like the phrase that Richard used. We talked about prevention of defects and those sorts of things. So from a sustainable point of view, it's absolutely imperative, because if you are making errors, and let's take a food processor for a moment, you're making errors in your food processing plant, wherever it's going to be, that means you have to scrap that consignment of goods. That's had an impact on the environment. It's had an impact on, they're going to have to reorder it all again. It's the same in manufacturing divisions. It's so in transport, for example, if you've got public transport and you fail to arrive on time, that has an impact on a whole other series of things which have to be reordered and reworked and whatever it's going to be. So it has a huge, huge impact on sustainability. And it is probably today one of the most important aspects of the societal element of the definition of quality we spoke of.
So, Richard, let me ask you about that then, specifically in the Portakabin businesses. You're a materials intensive business. What's the role of quality in helping Portakabin along its sustainability journey?
Yeah, so as Des was just saying, the sustainability side of it links in with quality so closely. So, for instance, we, as you rightly say, we consume an awful lot of materials. We have a large amount of steel and so many elements. I won't start listing them because you'll be fast asleep in seconds. As long as we are providing a conforming part, components, assemblies, and finished product, then we're not reworking. Obviously, rework generates cost and the use of materials, etc., which isn't sustainable. So that defect element that Des was alluding to. But I suppose the other element that comes to mind is that when we audit, and for instance, not just internally, but our supplier audits. And I'm not saying Portakabin's perfect at doing this at the moment, but the evolution of the thought path should be around when we audit suppliers, we should be looking not just about their training and capable repeatable process and traceability and new product development, which is sort of the traditional sort of quality management angles, but we should be looking very much about their practices around health, safety, sustainability, environment. And we've had multiple conversations in Portakabin about that, and we're let's just put it this way, we're slowly and surely going down that journey and starting to build it into our audit thinking and audit practice. But there's probably some more to do. As ever, it's continuous improvement. But yeah, so that's where I would see quality linking in with sustainability, if that answers your question.
Yeah, okay, that's really interesting. Thank you. And I think my reflection on this is the international standards of various types. ISO 9001 being one of the most visible in this area, have got far more work to do in supporting that element. I think the sustainability and environmental impact that quality can be enormous, and I think the standards need to support that, because people respond to that when their certifications depend upon it. I understand the next iteration does have more on that, but I think it needs to be a hell of a lot more on it. In my opinion, it's one of humanity's greatest and most critical challenges, isn't it? And there is a role for quality, as you say, as you both said, in helping to address that. Okay.
I think you raise a really good point there, Rich, and I think I must admit, I historically was never a great fan of the ISO 9000 standard, because I actually felt it was too much compliance orientated. I think the 2015 standard improved dramatically. It didn't get all the way, but one of the key focuses that we've got to build into our business systems is the ability to add innovation into our organizational spirits and with the way we work, because innovation is the thing that is going to help organizations transform, and we need to be able to do that quickly and quite and progressively, and therefore there needs to be scope in there for that. So therefore there needs to be understanding in the standards about that very subject, innovation. How do you demonstrate innovation, and what does it mean for the ways of looking at a business and invest in interrogating a business to see whether it's doing the things it needs to do. Notwithstanding, they still need to stick to the regulations. The quality assurance of regulations is still going to be vital. But how do we liberate organizations to be innovative as well?
Yeah, absolutely. And by what process? Yeah, indeed.
Yeah, good point.
Cool. Okay, so let's we've started to answer some of discussion point 2, which is about the profile of quality, and really exploring that a little bit more. So Richard, I'm going to come to you first and ask you about the profile of quality in your organization and organizations that you work with, thinking about the supply chain perhaps. How well is it understood and valued?
When I started in Portakabin 9 years ago, then I would say that we had a variety of different opinions. I guess we still have today, perhaps with slightly rose-tinted glasses on, but I believe that we're in a better place these days. There are still people around within the business who believe it to be sort of a bit more inspection orientated, or even if they don't believe it to be inspection orientated, that's the bit that they'll be a little bit more focused on day to day at least. What we have
auditors coming, aren't they? Yeah,
absolutely. The auditors coming. tidy up. So the quality assurance side of it and the preventive and the right first time, I think we've worked on that, and it's been about evolving people's mindsets and working with them over a period of time, just talking to each of your departments. So for instance, great conversations with production engineering about error proofing by fixtures, great conversations with design and engineering about error proofing by design, and it all adds to their understanding of their contribution to quality. But one of my favorite events of the month, well, it's not actually every month, it's every 2 or 3 months, Rich, but we have a welcome for new starters, and when new starters join the business, everybody that joins comes to the welcome. We have a big facility here at the York head office, and they have a session with me in small groups, just like they go off and see other people in small groups. And you get a really, obviously, a diverse group of people, because it's everybody in the business who starts. has this session. And for instance, I had a new receptionist the other day, and she was like, "Oh, you know, I don't have a role in quality." I said, "Absolutely, you do. Absolutely, 100%, because you're the first port of call that a lot of the customers hear when they first ring up. So how you approach your response to that call is a great reflection on Portakabin's brand." And that links again on the definition of quality. It's about reinforcing the brand, reinforcing what we're about as a business, in terms of, you know, if you come to us, we're a great group of people who will give you great service. It's all quality of service, quality of people, and all the rest of it. And that's back to that holistic definition again. So bottom line, quality in our organization, we're just like any other organization. There's a variety of people. Some think it's very much, you know, inspection and managing non-conformance when it goes wrong. There's a large group of people in the middle that understand it's important to get it right first time and build quality in. And then there's a few, or a reasonably large group of people who are more sort of forward thinkers in terms of how can we build quality and design it in, how it fits into the new product introduction process. So, you know, a broad range, just like many organizations, I guess.
Okay, thank you. So Des, coming to you with a slight refinement on that question. Yeah, we've heard Richard there talk about some of the older perceptions of quality around being inspection and the police force, and dare I say it, the smellers of fresh paint wherever they go. In the organisations that you work with, does quality still have a profile problem?
The answer is, I'm going to give you a politician's answer here. It depends.
It's a management consultant's response, isn't it?
Well, possibly. It depends on the context. And I think you need to actually, when you come to view quality, you need to view it from the context of that organisation. If you've got an organisation which is heavily regulated, then you can understand there is a tendency to lean towards the aspect of quality assurance, which is regulatory compliance, consistency, and uniformity.
Yep.
You can understand
my job and livelihood depends on it. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Absolutely, and there are people who are, you know, out there to challenge that you are sticking to the regulations, and therefore, you know, I think, and then there are those organisations that are completely liberated. Right, but if you go back and just take the context of, you know, many decades ago, quality assurance was very much about the regulations and standards, and quality control was very much about seeking the good from bad. Today, though, and there'll be people on this webinar today who will be associated with quality assurance groups, and it's very, very different today. Today, quality assurance is also about the preventative elements that Richard spoke of. It's about there is, even in the ISO 9000 standard now, there is something about process improvement. There is elements now about technology and innovation integration, and how do we go about it. Where I think it is going, and this plays to the point you made about the standards themselves, is that as they change, they've got to start thinking about employee engagement. They've got to think about motivation and morale. They've got to think about feedback, improvement, the collaboration cultures that work within organizations and between organizations. So there's a lot more about the holistic approach which the standards need to engage upon. But I think it would be unfair to say that they are still back in that date now. I think the insight and wisdom of our quality assurance fraternities has changed significantly for the better. And the same about our quality control people who are in now to process controls and capabilities up front to determine what will happen. I think that's all changed. So we're not in the right place totally, but we are heading in a right direction.
Yeah, and we wait and see. I can't remember whether it's 25 or 26, the new ISO 9001 standard, but whichever one it is, we wait and see. I know it's well in its authoring and refinement phases now. It'd be very interesting to see when the final draft does appear, as to how it tackles some of these challenges and ensures that it remains relevant for today's operating environment, where, let's face it, you'll struggle to find anyone that can argue effectively that the pace of change since the turn of the century hasn't increased.
No, but I think one of the things that's playing in its favour is the harmonisation of standards over the last 5 to 10 years.
For sure.
Things like medical devices, the ISO 13485.
Yeah, you're not inventing the wheel the entire time, are you?
No.
Yeah.
And you've got the automotive industry standards, the IATF 16949, and all those standards are harmonising, and they're being continually improved, and they're improved, fortunately, through the holistic mindset. If you look at certainly the IATF standard, the absolute underlying tenet in that whole standard is about the prevention of ever making a defect. Right, and the whole mindset about it, whether you're a designer, whether you're a manufacturer, whether you're in the office creating things, whether you're in a reception in a hospital, the way you collect the information to pass on to the consultant, all those sorts of things, all the standards are moving in that way, and I think that's very positive for quality. And I think that, at the end of Quality Week, on this one here, I think there's a lot of really good stuff about the quality profession, and that is moving in the right direction, where it's moving away from the old policeman inspector type role to the trusted advisor, the trusted guide in organizations. And I'm convinced on that basis that the term quality professional will be around for many, many, many years, but the actual shape and manifestation of the role will change quite dramatically.
Yeah, good point. Yeah, I agree. So I think we're talking here, and repeated themes that I'm hearing, just making note of, is about what's the word I'm looking for? Systemic approaches to quality and holistic approaches to quality. So some of those terms can be a bit nebulous sometimes, or nebular, I should say, sometimes. So give us a sense then of the benefits of developing what the benefits of developing a quality culture are in both of your experiences. And also, let me just throw an extra dimension. How do you know? What are the key things you see? So benefits and how do you know? Richard, can I come to you on that one?
Quality culture, yeah, it's that thing that you can't quite get your arms around necessarily.
Maybe not by accent. I sometimes ask myself.
Yeah, well, mine too. The quality culture we are trying to foster, promote, develop, etc. It's all around right first time. So that's not just right first time as in the product side of it. We've done quite a bit of work around the information side, because when a customer is looking to, in our case, it's an inquiry leading to placing an order. I recognise that not everybody on the call's in the product making business. So inquiry comes in, information is imparted, that information then gets translated into an order, hopefully at least a fair percentage of the time. It then becomes a plan, which leads to the components and the supply chain parts, in our case, to make a product. But the information and how that is transitioned between one person to another person and computer system to another, that is the systematic part. But it's also, for me, the quality culture is about how many people are absolutely determined to get that right first time, and that's on an individual level, or if they're designing automation and computer systems that allow it to be done, taking the human out of the equation. It's how much effort is going into that error proofing in the first place. So that's a quality culture of people developing those systems, as well as the quality culture of the individuals doing the day-to-day sausage machine of making or delivering whatever it is you're making or delivering. That's so I struggle to define how on earth you measure quality culture. It's kind of a sense and a feeling that you get from around the place of how many people talk about it, how many people evidence that they're living, breathing it. But how on earth you measure it, I've got no idea. I don't know whether Des has got any ideas.
Yeah.
Well, again, I think the evidence can only be empirical, can't it? But first of all, I try to define what is culture. So culture for me, and specifically about a quality culture, is, I think, denoted by two particular characteristics. And I know there's people online that are probably going to say, no, there's the six, right? But I'm going to pick on two. And what those two are: how things are done around here and what is acceptable.
Okay.
And you can judge that when you walk into an organization. So, for example, if I walk into a company processing mortgages, which we do, or processing insurance claims, which we do, and we say, who's your customer? If they say it's that person somewhere off out there that pays the bill, then it's probably not where you want to be, because the customer should be the people who takes my work and use it. And then you can challenge a little bit further and just ask questions like, okay, so what happens if you get a problem? And they said, well, they have to sort it out. Then you know you're heading the wrong place. If you sort of say, if you ask, well, what happens when you get a problem? He said, well, I will sort it. I will see it and I will sort it and I won't pass it forward. Now that, if you get that sort of mindset in organizations, you've started to influence that, how things are done around here and what is acceptable. Now, there's a lot of work that needs to go into to get to that place. You do need to create the customer focus, but you need to broaden that customer perspective. It's not just the person paying the bill. It is everybody who's in the supply line, and having a lens on them, because if you create a defect for them or an issue for them, it's not at minimum cost to society.
Yeah, okay. So got a question in about quality and improvement and how the two link then, Des, based on what you've just said. How do those attributes you've just rather eloquently described, how does that fit with improvement? Is there, and should there be boundaries?
I actually, and that's an interesting one. You said, are there boundaries? I hope that there are. I would love all organizations to be boundary free when it comes to innovation and continuous improvement, and then the engagement of the people in the organization in that improvement. Because I assure you that a leader with 100 people working for him, allowing the 100 people to come up with good ideas, will be far supremely better than that manager trying to encourage things that come through his or her head. So I think actually an organization that engages in innovation and continuous improvement is an essential feature. However, it needs to be focused in the right direction. And I think if you don't have it, play back to the quality culture, for example, so never to disappoint a customer, never to damage society, never to hurt an individual. All of those sort of values and propositions that you get in there are the things that need it. So I would implore leaders to liberate the organization, create the processes and systems that can allow innovation and continuous improvement to work. That way, then you'll go back to one of the things I said right at the beginning, the ikigai, the value of life, or the meaning of life. You bring that into your employees. They will bring that to you in spades. And so quality has to recognize that as a key organizational driver, is my belief.
Well, yeah, it's interesting that earlier on when we were talking in the dry run this morning, I was mentioned some of the examples that I'd seen about the separation between improvement and both in terms of organizational responsibility and capabilities, I guess, between improvement and quality. And just to flesh that out a bit for the audience here, there was a couple of examples I was talking through this morning. One specifically comes to mind, where the role of quality in that, and the quality function, the quality professionals in this particular organization, was to spot abnormalities and keep track of whether they had been resolved or not, and that was it. There was no support, there was no tools, skills, capabilities, or resource between the two. And then in a very short succession, a short space of time, I was working in another organization with a almost identical approach. And the quality department had measures on how many non-conformances had been closed that month, and I always asked about, well, what's the quality of the closure? How do you know whether those closures are successful? And that wasn't their KPI. Get these things opened and closed, and the timeliness of reporting on inspections and internal audits that they'd done was some of their key SLAs. And you can see why that evolves, because you need to keep these things moving, and it's about volume, and are we doing it? Are we looking at the business? But is it really effective? And that links back to our previous discussion point around the culture and what that looks like. But there's something about process and the process of doing quality, isn't there? How's that with sitting with you, Richard?
Well, when you look at anytime you have a defect or something that is below the required standard in either a processing environment or a services environment, whatever, then for me that automatically links into continuous improvement, because how can you move forward accepting that you're at that level of defects? I mean, it's baked into most of the standards these days, but for me it doesn't need to be baked into the standard. It's how would I don't even begin to understand how any organization would want to accept that level of non-conformity, because let's be honest, it's not just a non-conformity, it's a cost, it's an inefficiency, it's time that has to be planned to put it right, and there's potentially an unhappy customer at the end of it. So
a what? Yes. Okay.
Exactly. So you automatically go into a continuous improvement loop, and I fully accept that not everybody in a quality department, quality professional, would necessarily want to go into a continuous improvement element to their career and training and development on that front. I personally did. Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I personally did, because having started off as an engineer, same as Des, and then found my way into quality, then experiencing defects, non-conformity, product in my case. It was always going to be a case of, this can't go on. So therefore you get into in my case, I got into the improvement, and I learned my Lean Six Sigma, and hopefully that has helped me as a quality professional to support the organizations that I've worked in. I firmly believe personally that it has. So organizations where the quality function is recording the non-conformities and then relying on other departments to close them and measuring that. I mean, I get that, and Portakabin has some of that, because the quality department can't be involved in every non-conformity everywhere in the business, because we're a huge business. Yeah, so that's okay as well. It's a case of it's the old Pareto 80-20 rule in a sense. The quality function gets involved in the more complex, the more significant, the trends, the bigger costs, the ones affecting the customers more. And then we have systems in place, our non-conformance management system, whereby non-conformance reports go out to whoever the owner is deemed to be. The owner is required to respond and has a period to respond. And then we do some follow-up to say, have they been responded? But you raise a great point, Rich. What's the quality of that response? And guess what? It varies. Of course it does.
Yeah. Okay. And you've just really reiterated there the point Des was making about unleashing this power of the team. I mean, how can quality, ultimately quality would be a bottleneck if it were. involved in every single item, but that's about equipping and empowering the wider workforce or wider organization with those improvement skills, isn't it, to ensure that that is part of the developing culture. So thinking about that development finally then, some of the challenges in achieving quality that lasts then, Des, what are some of the challenges and how can they be tackled?
Well, I think just playing back into something that Richard said, because Richard, I think, probably takes a more enlightened view than certain quality professionals potentially. And one of the things has to be the responsibility for quality is for the person undertaking the task, not some mystical third party somewhere. So you need to make sure that that is really embedded in the part of the culture, which is how things are done around here. Is that I am responsible for quality, and I think that's the first thing on that one there. Then the whole approach of how you engage people. Let's start at the basics. The design of a process, right? People do not make defects. It's the process that does. Right?
Yes.
Right. So organizations that look and say, we've spoken to our operators, I've been into the office, I've spoken to the telephonists, right? It's not them that's doing it. And I think you've got to get the insight into leadership that says it's the process that's wrong, not the individual. Get that as part of the cultural dimension first. Build the skills and competencies to know, first of all, interpreting what is the voice of the customer and how do we structure a process that delivers precisely what the voice of the customer wants. And if you can't describe how the work works, you certainly can't improve it. And if you can't describe how the work works, the best you can do is firefight. And the only piece of advice I can give to any organization that wants to firefight is get some warm, protective clothing for your individuals, because it's going to be unpleasant. And it really is about building the skills, first in leadership, to have an appreciation that it is the process, not the individual, and then understand how to engage people in continuous improvement. Because if you make me responsible for my quality and you give me the scope and the skills and the wherewithal to be able to make changes to my process, then my intrinsic motivation as a human being will kick in. And I think that once the really great organizations are those that liberate that spirit in the people and to give people the skills of doing that. And I think the underlying thing here is actually you've got to have trust in your people. And as the quality director, my job was to put the quality department out of business. Right. And what I wanted to do is to turn my quality department into a facilitator of ease of innovation. Right? Okay. And they can act as the data miners, they can act as the people at sea, they can act as the coaches, they can act as the facilitators. That's great, but they must never take ownership of the problem. Okay. That is for the people.
Okay, thanks, Des. Rich, your final thoughts on this one.
Yeah, completely with Des on that one. It's all about having the individuals understanding and being given the tools, so whether that be physical tools, jigs and fixtures in my case, having the environment around them, having the training and therefore having the competence, and then letting them execute the process. And where you haven't got the right sort of outcomes, then building that into continuous improvement. It's so easy to say, and that's I mean, I've been around the block enough times that it's very textbook, and I'm massively aware that the reality on the ground is quite a lot more complicated than that. But even when you've got some of those elements that are partly missing, for instance, you might have a tool that's just about fit for purpose, but it's not perfect. I mean, okay, we've not got an endless pot of money. I'm talking generally now, I'm not talking about any particular business. You make the best that you can with that tool, and then it comes back to I can't resist going back to my Six Sigma, because it's all about having a capable, repeatable process, which I appreciate that maybe not everybody on the call understands if they've not done the Six Sigma side of it. No disrespect to anybody, but once you've got the man, method, material, machine, environment in place, then you should be able to have that repeatable process, as long as you've got that person who's got the quality mindset, is interested in doing a good job and can operate that process and those elements. So, and when it doesn't work out, you go into continuous improvement. So yeah, it's easy, isn't it? Not.
Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
So let's have a go at this for a summary then. I think these are some of the key messages that we've heard here. Quality is inextricably linked to sustainability and can be a key enabler. And do feel free to contradict me, guys.
No, absolutely go with that.
Quality is most impactful when it's considered systemically and/or holistically. And we can argue, maybe not today, about the difference between those two things.
Yeah.
Quality as the inspection force, I put this premise to you, is no longer relevant, and in brackets, nor fit for purpose.
I would argue, Rich, with that, in the sense that it's never been relevant.
Okay, never been relevant, but often prevalent. How about that?
I think that is perfect.
Okay, I'll give you that one, Des. Quality is most effective when integrated with improvement.
Yeah.
And then finally, Des's point there, remember, it's usually the process and not the person. Fair reflection of your discussion, folks?
Yeah, I'd probably
Absolutely.
emphasize the last one. It's always the process, not the person. And when you find it's to the person, you'll probably find it was the training process.
Very generous on a Friday
or something
afternoon,
else.
Okay, fantastic. So, and finally from us today, as you may have noticed, if you follow us on LinkedIn, which is the best place to get all the latest updates from us, we've been putting out resources all month on the subject of quality. So if you haven't seen these, do look them up. You can find them on LinkedIn or on our Knowledge Hub at pmi.co.uk. And at the top of the page, you'll see Knowledge Hub. And we've got a couple of, there you are again, Des. You've got a couple of Uncommon Sense podcasts, which are 15-minute tool-focused podcasts, really great listens. There's one with Des there on why quality and why today. And we've got a blog on 5 things that quality is and isn't. Really interesting for anyone that's engaged in an apprenticeship program. I can see there's many of you on here this afternoon. Do have a look at that. Interesting concepts for you to consider. And then the final one with my colleague Anthony on quality-driven agile, new dimension, new way of looking at some of those tools. Now available, and we've got several participants on the call. Great to see you guys with us. Our level 4 quality practitioner apprenticeship is available through the apprenticeship levy in England. You can find out more by attending an IAG, an information and guidance session, and they happen every Tuesday and Thursday. At 13:30 and 9:30 on a Thursday. You can also find that on the website. You'll see the Apprentice Hub at the top of the page. And wouldn't be right not to mention next month, slightly earlier than normal, because of the Christmas period. It is on Friday the 20th of December. This is my colleague Anthony Richardson and myself will be hosting this. Avoid an AI trap, AI being artificial intelligence, and we're pondering the question why artificial intelligence needs human intelligence. Actually, no, we're pondering and discussing the statement, not the question. That is a firm theory. I'm going to test that with everyone that's going to join us. You can register now at pmi.co.uk/webinars. And remember, that's earlier than normal. It's not on the last Friday of the month. It's on Friday, the 20th of December. What better way to finish your working year than attending with a beer a PMI Live on AI? I ask you. I shall be doing the same. So finally, from me, folks, I'd just like to say thank you to Richard and Des for fantastic contributions, fascinating discussions, really interesting dimensions from both of you. Really very much appreciated. Thank you to everyone for participating and being our guests this afternoon. It is, as ever, our absolute privilege to be able to deliver these things, and it's great to have you with us, and thank you so much for taking the time. So on behalf of Richard and Des and myself and everyone at PMI, have a great weekend, and thank you for joining us.